Hi there guys, in this video we'll be taking a look at the Alliance Challenger. Now this was one of the new ships that was added in 3.1. This is kind of like an upgraded version of the Alliance Chieftain. So first thing we're going to do is to have a look at it at the shipyard. Please bear in mind this is at Founders World, so there's a 10% discount on the prices. So let me just go and find it. I think there it is. Here it's got a price of 26.7 million, but without the discounts around about 29.4. It has space for an additional crew member. Its top speed is 204 with a boost speed of 316. It has 3 to maneuverability. Its jump drone range is anything up to about 22.5, I believe, without any modifications. And it has 208 to shields, 540 to armour. It has a hull mass of 450 tons. It also has a maximum cargo capacity of around about 144 tons without no shield, obviously. So what we need to do is to check into the ship in a bit more detail now. I'm just going to purchase one and show you what the cockpit looks like. Okay, so we're actually in the cockpit now, and as you can see we do have these kind of bars on the left side. They do accrue across the top as well and on the right hand side. In the middle section things aren't too bad at all, and you do have these bars in the middle, but they shouldn't really cause too much problems. If we have a look a bit lower, you can see there's a few console panels and things like that down there as well. So all in all, the view is not too bad here. There's nothing there to obstruct your view too badly. So the next thing to do is to have a look at the outfitting section. Here I'll go through all the different things that you can equip. So first to start, let's have a look at the hard points. As you can see, we've got a single large hard point, which is around about on the top. And then we've got 3 class 2 or medium hard points, and these are on the underside of the ship. And then finally we've got 3 class 1 or small hard points on the top of the ship. I will show you where all these are later on in the video. Next, onto our utility mounts, we have 4 of those. This is where you mount your shaft launchers, EMCs, manifest scanners, kill warrant scanners. So the next section to check is the core internals. So the first thing we're going to have a look at is the bulkhead. So you obviously start with the lightweight alloy, which comes free potentially, and we've got a few options here. So if we come down to a reinforced, which is this kind of second one up, you can see it's around about 40 tons and costs around about 10.7 million. Then the next one is military grade composites, which adds 78 tons. This is around about 24 million. Next is mirrored face composite, and this is again 78 tons. And then finally we've got the reactive surface composite. This is around about 63 million and also adds 78 tons. Bear in mind, like I said, that's with a 10% discount, so you add 10%. Next we have a class 6 power point, which should give us plenty of power on this ship really. This is on modified as well, so you will actually be able to get even more. For thrusters we have a class 6, so this shouldn't be too bad. So let's just put one on. Next is the frameshift drive, which is a class 5, and like I said earlier, it gives you around about 22.5 light years unmodified. I guess after modifications you could push it up to about 30 something odd. Next we have a life support, which is class 5. You could put a class 5A, but it really doesn't make a lot of difference in some respects unless you really need the extra oxygen. Next, on the power distributor, we've got a class 6. Again, like as well, I'm just installing the best so I can show you later. And finally we have a class 4 sensor. Now I don't see there's a lot of difference in the sensors, to be honest, so I might as well just put class 4A in there. Next, onto our optional internals. So these are the ones we can change about. So we can see here we have 2 class 6 slots, which has got a shield and a cargo rack. Next we've got 2 class 3s, which is kind of a bit of a drop. And then we've got 2 class 2s. At the very bottom we have these ones called military hardpoints. We have 3 of those, and these allow you to mount only hull reinforcement, module reinforcement or sail shell banks up to class 4. So this kind of gives it a more of a fighting sort of balance, if you know what I mean. So I think that's kind of it for the time being on the outfitting section. Like I said, I will show you where all the guns are later on. I think the next thing to do is to have a look at the external of the ship. So if we have a look at the external ship, you can see it's got a very similar theme to that of the Alliance Chieftain. I think the Alliance Chieftain does have an extra set of engines on the front wing, whereas this doesn't. The engines itself, like I said, are all mounted on the back on kind of wings essentially, which I'm not entirely sure if they are easier to hit. They may be, but as you can see, the engines are arranged with 2 at the bottom and 2 at the top on these kind of wings. Overall, the ship looks okay to me. I'm not the biggest fan of this style ship, but I'm sure that is highly subjective, and there's people who really like this design of ship. The cockpit itself is on the front, remember, so it's actually in a very good positioning, unlike some of the other ships where it can be very high or low. Anyway, so I think that's a look at that. Let's take this ship out for a spin and see what it does.
Disengage from landing pad. Maintain correct lane on exit.
So now we're actually in space. We've got a kind of top speed of 232 with a boost of 357-ish. Yep. So all in all, that's pretty good. Bear in mind, like I said, this is not modified. So the next thing I'd like to do is to test the turn speed in my kind of rough way of doing it. So for this, what I'm going to do is use the station as a reference point. I'm going to have 4 pips in the engine, which is the best case scenario, and then put the speed to the middle. So this is going to be the best case scenario without modification. Obviously, if you modify it, it should be a little bit better. Anyway, so let's start and see what we do. So that's looking around about 9 seconds for a full turn, which is a little bit on the slow side, but I guess this is a bit bigger, so that's why it's a bit slower. Anyway, so the next thing to do, I think, is to check into where all the weapons are, as it is pretty confusing sometimes where they all are, and it can make a huge difference to what you place where. So I've moved away from the station now not to cause any aggro. I've also bought some weapons for the ship, so I bought a large beam weapon for the large hardpoint. Then I bought 3 pulse lasers for the medium hardpoints, and then finally 3 multi-cannons for the small hardpoints. And then I've set the fire groups up to be that the beam and pulses are on the primary fire group, and then the multi-cannons on a secondary group. This is not a recommended build, it's just to show you where they are. So you can see our large hardpoint is on the top, and then our 3 medium hardpoints are on the bottom. And then finally our 3 small hardpoints are on the top, which you can just about see as they're multi-cannons. So that should give you a pretty good firing range, and it shouldn't mean there's anything too untowards like some of the other ships. So let's have a look where they actually are. So to show you where they are, I've moved to the outside of the ship once again. This time the weapons are deployed. So our large hardpoint, which is our class 3, is on the middle here. You can see it pretty easily. That is a beam weapon, which is kind of near the front of the ship also, and shouldn't mean it should have any issue actually hitting anything. I'll just show you it firing. And the next thing I'm going to show is the small hardpoints, because they're on the top also. So you can see in a kind of triangle there's 3 multi-cannons, and there are our small hardpoints. So they're all kind of around the same area. The next thing I want to show you is where the medium hardpoints are. These are on the underside of the ship, so I'll just spring the ship round so you can actually see under it a bit easier. And you can see again they're arranged in a kind of 3 pattern. You've got 1 at the front and then 2 further back, if I can get the camera set up. So hopefully that's explained where the hardpoints are. On some ships it can be very confusing and can make it very difficult to make a build for that ship. So that's my look at the Alliance Challenger. It does have very similar stats to that of the Federal gunship, bearing it's got the same amount of guns and roughly the same amount of shielding. However, the Challenger does have a little bit faster top speed and also a bit more stronger hull, which could make it suited better for Fargan's attack. This ship is definitely designed for combat, as it's not particularly that great at trading. You could use it for exploration, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. Even after modifications, you're going to be looking at around about 30 light year jumps, which is not that great compared to some of the other ships out there. But you could use it for exploration if you want. Bear in mind though that it is around about 29.4 million before any discounts, so it's pretty expensive in that case. So if you have any thoughts or suggestions, please leave them below. I'm sure they'll help other people out also. If you haven't already done so, it would be great if you could like the video, and if you're also a subscriber, a big thanks. That does help me out massively. Anyway guys, I think that's for this one. Take care and have fun out there.